to recognize David Fitzpatrick. I don't know if I need a motion to do that because I haven't. All right, well, I'll do that. We'll do that first once we start. Good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. Today is Tuesday, June 4th, and we're glad you joined us this evening. I'll begin by calling this meeting to order. Next, we'll have an invocation by Pastor Randy Edwards of Grace Church.
Would you pray with me? Our Heavenly Father, I come to you this evening as these are elected servants and public officials discuss and deliberate the business of our town and community. I thank you for their service on behalf of our town, and I pray that you would give them wisdom and skill as they do the work of leading and planning and managing. Grant them success in their efforts to see our community thrive. Would their labor on our behalf this evening be personally fulfilling to them, and would you give them joy in seeing their hard work bear fruit in blessing others? Lord, we ask that you'd have mercy on our law enforcement personnel and keep them safe as they do the work of protecting us. We thank you for Chief Tilley, for the police department, command staff, police officers, communications and support personnel who very often don't get to see people at their best, but most often in their hours of greatest need. Lord, I thank you and ask that you would bless our police department with a spirit of humility, fidelity, honor, wisdom, courage, and love as they do the work to maintain and enforce our laws. Have mercy on our emergency fire and rescue and service personnel. We thank you for Fire Chief, Aldermen, and we thank you for those who serve as firefighters and first responders. We ask that you would protect them as they run towards danger and put themselves in harm's way to rescue and support those in crisis and need. And Lord, I thank you for all those who work in our town, whether they work in government, finance, community development, public services, or human resources. Kernersville is a good place to live, to work, and to raise a family. But each person here makes this town better, and I thank you for them, Lord. This evening, as we do the work of making the good which you have entrusted to us better, we ask that you would make us able to speak forthrightly, listen carefully, agree respectfully, serve graciously, and above all, honor you in all that we do or say. In the deliberations and actions of this meeting, may your will be done. And I ask these things in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. As we begin tonight, we have one additional item on our agenda. We'll have it at the very beginning because it's an unusual and timely topic. And I'd like to recognize David Fitzpatrick, who would like to say a few words to the board and the Kernersville Fire Department. David, if you could come forward to the podium and make sure your microphone's on.
Honorable Mayor, Board of Aldermen, thank you for giving me this time. I'll be short and brief, and I want to echo what Pastor of the Grace Church said. I'll speak to you with no notes, strictly from my heart. I want to remind each of you and thank you for your public service. As a public servant for 30 years, it's not an easy job. You get the phone calls late at night, and you sometimes question why you lead. I'll tell you why you lead. I want to just briefly talk about the town that I was born and the town I live in. When I was young, I got injured and had to go to the hospital and got an infection in my nose. back when we didn't have a drugstore at every corner. There was only one drugstore in town. And on a Sunday, when everything's closed for church, there was neighbor Penix. And when my dad called, neighbor Penix came on a Sunday morning and got the medicine so that I could heal. When I was little, couldn't wait to ride my bike up to Charlie Snow's after the baseball game because Charlie had one of the few color TVs in town. That's back when they played baseball in the World Series during the day. So Charlie was kind enough to let us eat French fries all day and watch a baseball game. When it was time to get married, Solly Coltrane was the guy that found Jan and I a place to live. $150 this is 1982, $150 a month, free heat, free water. When it was time to build that house, there was John Lane. I said, Mr. Lane, I'm gonna try to build a house. He said, well, if you buy your materials from me, I'll carry your loan. I said, Mr. Lane, I'm a school teacher. It's gonna take me a couple years to build the house. David, if you buy your materials from me, I'll carry your loan. That's the town we live in. You never know, because in the blink of an eye, things change. My remarks are about what happened on the wee hours of Thursday, May 30th, when my life certainly changed. And I want to express my appreciation. And thank you, Ms. Mayor, for just giving me, if you'll allow me, just 2 more minutes. We're blessed to live in a community where folks reach out and touch your heart and make a difference. The fire that we sustained at Fitz on Main could have been significant. Without the quick response from the Kernersville Fire Department, Chief Aldermen and his men did an incredible job. It could have had fatalities. We could have lost half a city block. Quick response from the fire department made the difference. The next day, when the ashes and there's wood smoldering, that's when you feel like you're George Bailey from A Wonderful Life. Sometimes when the chips are down, you don't realize the friends you have. Well, I feel it, and I'm expressing my gratitude. One of the first folks to come in was the town manager's wife with a generator and lights. Thank you, Tina and Will. Thank you, Chief Tilley, for coming by and expressing your support and asking me if there's anything I need. And I felt your sincerity, sir. This town is about community. I've lived it, and now I'm experiencing the other side. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. The next day, because you don't know where to start, there's a platoon of volunteers in the back lot at Fitz on Main. I didn't call anybody for help, but Commander Long from the VFW and the gentlemen and ladies that came in, I thank you. I know now why my dad loved to go to the VFW. There's a band of brothers that exists that I never knew was that strong. Chamber of Commerce, all day Friday, we're there in the parking lot, cleaning the soot off the dishes and all the restaurant ware. I didn't ask for a favor. They answered the call. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager, for bringing the building inspector to look, to give me a direction and being a North Star and helping me to start to rebuild. Still waiting on the insurance adjuster, though. But I tell you what, I haven't waited for anybody in this town. And so when you watch, and you don't even have to wait till Christmas, And it's not Hollywood. It's Kernersville, where people make a difference and touch the lives of others. I'm eternally grateful, and I just want to express my appreciation. I'll mention a lot of names, and I'll miss folks. I'll do 2 quick stories, and then you get on with the line of business. Okay, I'll be short. I don't know the person. He said, well, your dad wore me out when I was in elementary school and I needed it. Your mom was there when I was a guidance counselor, when your mom was a guidance counselor at school and I needed the nurturing. She was there and I needed it. And he said to me, you've got the resolve, you've got it from your parents, and I know you'll continue it. I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Yes, ma'am. I'll put you in the
Now leaving to go wash dishes in the commercial kitchen because somebody offered their services. About 500 of those people that offered their services. Thank you for making a difference.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you to Commander Dave Long and past Commander Todd Walters for the VFW's involvement, and to Chris Comer for organizing the Chamber's involvement. We're looking to come forward to coming back for a 3rd grader pancake, Dave. Okay. All right, we'll move on now to our regular agenda. We have several public hearings scheduled for tonight. When an agenda item is denoted as a public hearing, persons attending shall be permitted to address the Board of Aldermen regarding the item under consideration. Those speaking in favor speaking first, those opposed speaking second. Proponents and opponents shall each be given 20 minutes of time to speak, and may choose to allow one speaker to utilize that time or choose to allocate the time amongst different speakers. In the event that either proponents or opponents have not designated a speaker or speakers to represent that view, the mayor shall divide the 20 minutes by the number of speakers wishing to address the Board of Aldermen, and each such speaker shall be allowed that given time within which to express his or her comments, ideas, and concerns. After the opponents speak, the mayor will allow the proponents 5 minutes for rebuttal. If the proponents choose to exercise this option, the opponents will also have 5 minutes for rebuttal. In the event that the proponents do not present a rebuttal, then the opponents shall be given no further time to speak. So that policy is also printed on our agenda and displayed on the screen, and we've been using it for a while. This was adopted in December 2023. All right, so the first item on the agenda is a public hearing on rezoning. Amanda Hodiern, agent for Framework Group, requests a single-phase conditional rezoning from RS12 to RM18C for properties located to the north of Old Winston Road and west of Market View Drive, zoning docket K758A2. We'll begin with a presentation by our staff. Ms. Garner.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Aldermen. Tonight, our first case is case 758A2. This is a single-phase conditional rezoning. Amanda Hodiern is the agent for the applicant. The applicant is Framework Group LLC. The rezoning, as stated, is residential single-family 12, and the requested zoning is residential multifamily conditional at RM 18C. The entire site is just shy of 18 acres. The applicant's proposed use is a residential building multifamily, which is defined in our ordinance as a residential building which contains 3 or more dwelling units and occupies 1 zoning lot. This does include single-room occupancy facilities. The site is located on the north side of Old Winston Road and to the west of Market View Drive. You can see it highlighted in red. Adjacent properties are zoned residential multifamily 8 special, general business special RS 12, that's residential single family, limited office special, and highway business special. It is 1 parcel. As I mentioned, it was just shy of 18 acres. There are 5 apartment buildings proposed, 4 in the back, 1 large one, and then 3 smaller ones, and then 1 apartment building on the south side of the Kernersville Creek, as well as a clubhouse, a maintenance building, and a trash compactor. Amenities for residents would include a clubhouse, a pool, a tot lot, a dog park, and a communal garden. And as I mentioned, the site is bisected by Kernersville Creek and the floodplain, which you can see in these squiggly lines that sort of go through the middle of the parcel. That's made the layout challenging for the developer and the engineer. The site can be accessed from both Old Winston Road and Market View Drive. Both would provide left and right turn capabilities. Road improvements are required on Old Winston Road. Old Winston Road is currently a North Carolina Department of Transportation owned and maintained road, and so they are requiring improvements to that intersection. The driveway location on Old Winston Road is required to line up with the existing entrance to the J. Pepper site for safety. The circumstances of access from Old Winston Road have changed significantly from earlier iterations of multifamily proposed on this site. So with that .A2 after the case, this is a second amendment to the original case. Originally, the tract behind this parcel was privately held and intended to be developed. This is now the town's park, Pope Park property. A public street at the time would have served both parcels. So when the Knolls came in for rezoning, or the property that's now known as the Knolls, an area for right-of-way was conditioned with their rezoning to develop a public street that would serve this parcel in this case, and then the now Pope Park parcel. This right-of-way was dedicated by plat in 2020. The developer is proposing to construct a public road this time as well through the subject parcel to serve this development and the public park in the future. The road would be publicly dedicated but would not be accepted for maintenance until it was connected to the park. As being a public road, sidewalks would be required to be constructed on the eastern side of the road in certain areas to minimize the environmental impact at the creek crossing. Otherwise, it would be the sidewalk would be on both sides. Guardrails are also noted to be provided due to some grade changes with adjacent properties. The highway corridor overlay district applies to the site due to the road frontage on Old Winston Road, and the applicant is choosing to use the Central Kernersville overlay design standards for the buildings. The buildings are 3 and 4 stories, and the 4-story buildings have a walkout basement. You can see a rendering of the elevations on the slide at the bottom. The site is in conformance with the land use plan, so there's no land use plan amendment required. It is currently defined as mixed use, which is established to accommodate a variety of uses, which may range from residential, commercial, office, and industrial uses. It has been established to promote redevelopment of downtown and the Bodenhammer Street area. It goes on to describe other areas that it has been applied to, but the mixed use designation is this pink color. Green is environmental protected, so that does follow Kernersville Creek. And then the red here along South Main Street is commercial. The land use plan does also have a small area plan for the eastern portion of Old Winston Road, southern portion of South Cherry, and Southern Street. Since 2003, the land use plan notes that this area has been transitioning from residential to office to mixed uses. The small area plan called for a planned mixed-use development at Sally Greenfield's property to include commercial and apartments. The commercial is constructed, that's the Lowe's Foods Shopping Center and the out parcels surrounding it. So this project would fulfill the apartment portion of the planned mixed-use development as called for in our land use plan. This was heard at the May Planning Board meeting. Planning Board and staff's recommendation is to approve the request to amend the Unified Development Ordinance of the town. In this case, finding the rezoning is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, the Kernersville Development Plan, and reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons: that the one-phase rezoning requires the adoption of the submitted site plan as part of the consideration of the rezoning. North Carolina Department of Transportation required transportation improvements to Old Winston Road will help facilitate the additional traffic generated by the development, and the development is in keeping with the small area plan developed for the area, noted as the eastern portion of Old Winston Road, southern portion of South Cherry, and Southern Street in the land use plan. Planning Board and staff also recommend approval of the site plan with conditions as presented in the staff report. The vote at the May Planning Board meeting was as follows, 5-2 with 3 members absent. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions at this time? This is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. First, we'll hear from the proponents.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nice to be with you, members of the board. My name is Amanda Hodiern. My offices are at 804 Green Valley Road over in Greensboro. I'm here tonight on behalf of Framework Group LLC, which is the applicant. I have with me tonight Mr. Nick Herring, who is a principal of that group. We also have with us a couple of experts who helped us with this design over the last year or so. So they're here at your disposal should you have any technical questions. We have Mr.
Let me
John.
stop you there. Can everyone hear her okay? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. We have Mr. John Schick, our traffic engineer from DRMP Engineering, and we have Mr. Barrett Hagan of Hagan Engineering, who did our civil and design work. So they are here as we need them. Before we get started, I do want to take a moment to talk about the nature of this request. As you heard from Ms. Garner, we are asking for RM18C, conditional use, and in the single-phase format. So what that means, of course, is RM18, multifamily, 18 units per acre from a density standpoint, but conditional. And the conditions are the site plan that you have before you, that you've heard about from staff, and that you'll hear about more from me. And one of the aspects of that I want to highlight is that we have only 200 units on our site plan. So even though we're asking for RM18, we only had to do that for a development standard. We needed it for the building height. The density is actually under RM12. So if it were strictly an equation for density, we'd be asking for RM12. So I just wanted to talk about that. And then I also always like to emphasize that this is a single phase request. So what that means is that the site plan that you've heard about, that you're going to continue to hear about, is a firm commitment. It's a commitment to you. It's a commitment to our neighboring property owners in the community that what you see is what you'll get if this is approved. As you know, because I've been here to ask for it, if it does have to change, I have to come back and ask you for a modification in order to change it. So it is a firm commitment that everyone can rely upon as presented tonight if it is favorably received. So with that, if we could go to the first slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about our site selection here. You see a zoomed out aerial view. The red star is the subject property, and what we have around it is a very compelling land use pattern that sets up nicely for this multifamily request. You have Old Winston, well, let's get to the bottom first. The diagonal heavy roadway that you see is, of course, the interstate corridor. Coming up from that, the next roadway that you see traveling east-west there, almost the middle of the screen below the site, is Old Winston Road. That's a heavily improved piece of infrastructure. You guys have worked a lot on that as a town over the past couple years, and it was in fact studied, designed, and planned to accommodate not only the Lowe's shopping center and all that commercial retail, but up to 260 units of multifamily. So Old Winston Road, the big nice roundabout that was installed there, all of that was contemplating what's been happening. So this land use pattern sets up nicely. You've got a successful shopping center. You've got a successful shopping center on the south side of Old Winston Road. The J. Peppers site was referenced. And then you've got the Knolls development to the west of us, which is also multifamily at RM8. And then, of course, as you go further and further north, you get into more single family. So in the middle here, we have our site and the site to the north of us. To the north of us, as we know, that is now going to be what we're calling Pope Park. So that's going to be a great in-town recreation opportunity with some active and passive opportunities for your residents and citizens. That's going to draw all kinds of people to this part of town. Not only now can they grocery shop, go see their accountant, get a nice dinner, but now they can also go visit the park for whatever may be going on there. So we have in the middle here our site, which now can provide a high-quality, convenient place for people to live, and not only live and do their daily lives, but access all these things that the town has provided to people in this area. People who live here could walk to the grocery store. They could walk to these restaurants. They can walk to the park. This huge investment that the town is making for opportunities and recreation for its citizens. These are people who can utilize that. And it makes a very intuitive and textbook planning land use pattern here. It's a nice, if we go to the next slide, sorry. Yeah, so a little bit more on this land use pattern here. You're seeing it from a zoning perspective. The yellow is that general business, the blue is the office, the pink is the mixed use, or excuse me, RS12 right now. And then we've got the RM8 to our east, which is the Knolls. So you see here how this is a nice feathering of intensity. At Old Winston Road, around the roundabout, you've got all your commercial uses, your office, your retail. You would feather out to this multifamily, and then step down again to the townhomes, and then step down to your single family as you go north of here. So this is a request that I submit to you drops right into this land use pattern that currently exists. It provides that very necessary and useful transition between commercial intensity and single family residential. It also provides housing opportunities for people to access all these goods and services and recreation opportunities that are here in one of your activity nodes of town. It also makes great use of your town and town funds and state funds for all the infrastructure that's been built here. Of course, we've got water and sewer that is immediately accessible from the site, but also all the improvements on Old Winston Road that were, again, contemplated, designed, and installed to accommodate this vision and this activity level for this part of the city. It also provides a critical piece of infrastructure to connect to that new town's Pope Park that Ms. Garner mentioned. She did a great job of explaining the public road that this development would provide. So by doing so, when the park is ready, this will act as a direct conduit into the park for access, for people looking to access the park from Old Winston Road in this part of your town. And we look forward to having the park as a neighbor that everyone can immediately access. Next slide, please. Land use plan compatibility. As Ms. Garner mentioned, this proposal is completely consistent with your Kernersville adopted land use plan. That plan designates this area as mixed use. That's the magenta. You're seeing it again, just like in your staff report. That area is meant to accommodate a variety of uses, which may range from residential, commercial, office, and industrial. As we've just talked about, you've got your residential, you've got your commercial, and you've got your office in place. So now we're looking to add the multifamily residential aspect to this area. Not only do you have a mixed use designation here, but this part of your town has been specifically looked at and specifically planned in the eastern portion of the Old Winston Road, southern portion, South Cherry, and Southern Street plan. So what that is a microcosm of the larger area planning to specifically say, what do we want to go here? How do we want this to build out? And that small area plan calls for a comprehensively planned mix of uses that would transition from the commercial node out to multifamily. It recommends a residential maximum density of 12 units per acre. You'll recall at the top of my comments, I stated that we are meeting that. We're actually under 12 units an acre. So we're meeting that mandate. It recommends road connectivity through various uses. We've just talked about that. Our opportunity is to connect to the park, to the recreational use, so we're doing that. It also recommends that building design take into account the other residential uses in the vicinity, and we think we've done that very well. I'll talk about that a little, and my client, Nick, will talk about that as well. If we could go to the next slide, please. A couple of site plan specifics. Ms. Garner covered this very well, and I know you've got it in your staff report, but I do want to highlight a few things. We are at 200 units here. Again, that is a commitment. That is a mandate if this plan were to be adopted. That works out to 11.17 units per acre under that very important 12 unit per acre mandate in your comprehensive plan. It's 5 separate buildings. I need to correct my slide here. 5 separate buildings and an amenity center, and it's spread across the entire 18 acres. As you can see, Ms. Garner referred to it as a challenging site, and that's true, but the result is that you get a nice spread and breathability to the development pattern on the site. All the buildings are different sizes. We've got some different shapes. It gives a nice variability and a breathability to the site. We've got a preserved and undisturbed stream corridor with Kernersville Creek that was mentioned. And all that adds up to 66% of the site remaining in open space. So of that 18 acres, 66% of it remains open. We do have ingress and egress at 2 places, one on Market View Drive, which is the little stub that lines up across from the Lowe's Food parking lot. And then we have the Old Winston Road, public road, that is proposed there that we've talked about. And all of those are full movement, as Ms. Garner mentioned. We also have the public street access that goes on up to Pope Park. In the meantime, while we're waiting on the park, that would be a temporary turnaround. So in case anyone gets confused and needs to get back out, they can easily turn around inside the site. And of course, we'll maintain that until the town is ready to make use of it as a dual use public road and take over maintenance. Next slide, please. These are our building elevations. I just wanted to talk about these for a moment. Nick will talk about this some more, but the site's located in the Highway Corridor Overlay District, so that means we don't have to do a lot of extra conditions about landscaping and some of our exterior building materials because your ordinance already covers that. So we're, of course, adhering to all of those higher standards within your HCOD. We're also voluntarily complying with the Central Kernersville Overlay District architectural standards, which are the most restrictive standards for your architectural review. The design is very intentional. It's meant to be in keeping with the local architectural vernacular. Nick will talk about how that came to be, but it's meant to look like it belongs here and drop well into a very established and successful part of your town. So if you'll allow me, I want to go through each of the 5 buildings real quick, just because they are all different. Not only are they spread across the site, but they each look a little different, which I think adds a nice organicness to a multifamily project. So here you can see in the little key at the bottom which building we're talking about. So this is the only apartment building on the front side of the creek, closest to Old Winston Road. You see the front, rear, and side elevations. Next slide, please. Now we're moving across the creek. This is the first smaller building that you get to, so immediately you notice it's smaller. It's got a little bit different use of building materials in terms of where they're placed, different use of the verandas to give a little bit of variability while still, reading as part of the same development. Again, you see front, rear, and sides. Next slide, please. This is the mid-sized building. Again, same theme, very much you can tell it's the same development, but still a little bit different. Next slide. This is the other small building that sits north of the creek. Next slide. This is the largest of the 5 buildings that sits all the way to the rear of the site. Since it was large, we wanted to make sure it had a lot of articulation, a lot of breaks in it, so you don't get a monolithic facade. We wanted to have a lot of visual interest, even though it does sit at the deepest part of the site. Next slide, please. This is the side elevations of that larger building. And last elevation here, this is the final smaller building, which you can see is another variation of the building materials and theme and elements that we're using throughout the site. So there was a lot of attention given to that variability and making the site look interesting but comprehensive throughout, and Nick can talk more about that. Also want to pause for a moment here, if we could, and look at the side elevation. We do have 3 buildings that are a 3-4 split. So what that means is that we are working with the topography on the site rather than grading it all down and having to do that. We have the Kernersville Creek that runs through the site, so as you can imagine, the site goes like this as it dips down towards that creek bed. So rather than grading all that out, we wanted to work with it. So a, quote, 4-story building will sit on that grade, kind of like a building block that sits into that hill. So you get 4 stories from one view. If you were standing in the creek bed and looking at it, you'd see 4 stories. But up from the roads, the parking lots, you see 3 stories. So that's how that 3-4 split works. It'll essentially look like a 3-story building from all perimeters of the site. And importantly, that first story, I think Ms. Garner referred to it as a basement level. It has the same light and openness that any other interior apartment unit would have. So if you imagine the inside of that building, there's an interior hallway. So the back side of those units don't have windows or doors anyway, or windows, excuse me. So that's only a half unit on the bottom there. So it still has the front completely open to light, air, and all the window opportunities exactly like all the other units. So neighborhood outreach, we can go to the next slide now, please. We did, of course, hold our neighborhood meeting. We posted the sign when we were doing that in the ordinance. There's a couple of photographs from our meeting. As you can see, we only had 4 participants, but we had some good conversation. Talked about our project. There's the neighborhood summary that was submitted to staff, or the communication summary that was submitted to staff of that process. And I also did receive a few emails and phone calls and some folks we've stayed in touch with through the course of this as they've had questions. And so we've made sure to talk to our neighbors and answer those questions. So with that, I'm going to let Nick come up and talk some about framework, and I'll just remind you that if you have technical questions, we have both our traffic engineer and our civil engineer here with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Madam Mayor, members of the board. My name is Nick Herring. I'm here representing the Framework Group tonight. Some of you may have met Philip Smith, president of Framework Group. He can't be here tonight, so I'm stepping in for him, although I've worked for Framework for 10 years now. We are based in Tampa. All that we do is multifamily, and we do quite a bit of it throughout the state of Florida. We've got about 3,600 apartment units completed in our history. We've got another 2,000 planned and 850 or so under construction. So that includes the vast majority of our pipeline is in Florida. We're in Tampa, Florida, as I mentioned, but we do have a growing pipeline in Georgia, in the Carolinas, and we see this development as key to that pipeline. Our approach is one of adaptability and thoughtfulness. So in these first a dozen or so slides, you're going to see examples from our portfolio, real-life examples that most are constructed and occupied. And the key takeaway that I want to emphasize is that there's a variety to them because each one is meant to be contextually appropriate, tap into what we love about a place, what we love about a neighborhood, and what we think really speaks to the existing architecture and what is contextually appropriate. So no 2 of our developments are alike. Here in Kernersville, you're going to get something entirely unique from us, and that's the way that we like to do it. So we can run through these fairly quickly. Thank you. This is Arcos in Sarasota. This actually has an on-site art gallery because that is one thing that we loved about downtown Sarasota, that it has a vibrant art scene. So that thoughtfulness and attention to, again, what makes a place authentic and unique translates even to the amenities. So I know I said we'll go fast, and I can stick to that from there. 500 Harbor Island in Tampa, this is 21-story concrete high-rise. Again, the variety translates to the construction type, sizes and shapes as well. So we can keep going. Meriton Apartments in Lakeland. So we can keep going just as I talk. You'll see an emphasis on quality, both interiors and exteriors, variety of, again, sizes, shapes, densities, exterior materials, architectural styles, some modern, some more classic, some art deco, some more neoclassical, so we can keep going. That's also in Tampa, as is this one, 350 apartments. Yep. This is in Spartanburg, South Carolina, downtown Spartanburg, 208 apartments. This is Wildwood, Florida. More of a low country appearance to this one, 3 stories, board and batten siding, things like that. Wesley Chapel is a suburb of Tampa. This one is in Orlando. So we can just keep going through to the slides, yes, that are specific to what we're talking about here. You can advance to the next slide, thank you. Next slide, next slide. So, as I mentioned, we like to draw on what we love about a place and its architectural history. So, first we study historic buildings from here, specifically on the screen. We drew from the use of masonry, different articulations in the building, moving in and out, roof appointments such as dormers and cupolas, variation in siding, masonry materials, fiber cement siding, lap siding. You can go on to the next slide. These are some of the residential structures that we saw around Kernersville that we also emulated. The use of verandas, as Amanda mentioned, again, dormers on the roofs, chimneys, variations in roof heights, jogging up and down. We can keep going. And then our process with the architect is to work through some ideas. So these are not specifically in Kernersville, but this is from our architect's portfolio. And across the bottom, you see some of the working iterations of what eventually became our Kernersville proposed elevation. So we can keep going. And then here, this is what Amanda's already presented to you. So all of that context translates to, again, the variety that Amanda mentioned across the facade, changing from masonry to lap siding, adding stacked porches in the middle there. Across the roof, you see it jogging up and down, really prominent midsection, complete with dormers and then gable ends, chimneys breaking up the roof elevations. Again, the variety, what we think is contextually appropriate, translates to a rich architectural presentation and ultimately quality, which is what we're trying to deliver here. I look forward to answering your questions, and thank you so much for hearing me out.
Thank you. All right, we have heard from the proponents. Now I'll recognize the opponents. I have 3 people signed up to speak: Amy McMarhill, Fran Johnson, and Rick Dappin. So each person has 6.5 minutes. I saw a couple other people come in. Has anybody else filled out a speaker card to speak on this agenda item? If you would, bring that card forward. That will affect the times. Have you filled out a card? If you have a card, well, I've got your card. Is anybody else filling out a card? Oh, people are just moving around the room. Okay, we're set then. Sorry. I'll recognize Amy first. Fran, you'll be second. And we're going to count the clock down from 20, so.
Good evening, Mayor, Aldermen, members. My name is Amy McMahill, and I'm a resident of the Wexford subdivision here in Kernersville. Thank you for allowing me to voice my concerns. I'm appealing to you to slow the head-spinning pace of development in the South Main area. We are drowning in residential and commercial development and ensnarled in traffic gridlock. On October 1st, 2019, a zoning change request on this same property was presented to the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. The accompanying project plan was nearly identical to what is being presented this evening, from what I can tell. Allowing me to summarize the recorded meeting minutes. Citizens expressed concern with heavy traffic congestion in the area. The roundabout had already been completed. Some aldermen agreed that the traffic patterns and load were still very concerning. Delays for Big Farm bypass project were discussed. Concern about overcrowding and added stress at our school systems was shared. Our city manager shared that our schools were continuing to be filled. Mr. Neal, who was a previous board member, presented his concerns, and during his talk, he discussed that he had been approached by the developers to talk about the projects, and he had mentioned that this parcel of land he suspected would be used for either a skilled home for elderly or possibly a theater, but he didn't foresee that the property would ever be used for apartments. And that conversation was concurred to by another alderman. That was 4 years prior to that 2019 meeting. At that time, the plan was turned down. It's naive to believe that time doesn't change plans. So let's look at where we are today. The same traffic concerns, school concerns, and overdevelopment are happening. The 170-unit Knolls of Millward Creek apartment complex has been built. Many additional businesses have continued to be added. Then there's the Polk Memorial Park plans, the Ivy Redmond Center and Event Center, and recently $10 million that was approved for the budget for a new pool facility. Without any doubt, these projects will bring many visitors to our community, and you can count on the upcoming bypass to lead them directly to the Main Street corridor. Our current road structure remains basically the same. Rush hour weekend traffic is horrendous. The short distance between Hopkins Road and the roundabout has 19 driveways that dump onto Old Winston Road. Truly a driver's education movie experience. The bypass project is planned to lessen the South Main congestion. Shocking site clearing has begun, but with the scope of the project, I assume it'll be at least 2 years before we see any traffic improvements. And let's face it, the majority of our grocery stores, shopping, churches, gas stations, restaurants, banking, and other businesses are in the center of that part of town. Our daily lives and travels will still bring us, the majority of us, to the South Main Street area. To allow a 200-unit apartment complex in the center of the situation is not a good plan. Please put the brakes on additional development in this area. We ask that you deny the rezoning request, ask the developer to leave the land as is, or propose a less impactful alternative. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. All right, next is Fran Johnson.
Hey, I'm Fran Johnson. I reside at 222 Bowcrest Road. And honestly, I just found out about this about a week ago, so I hadn't had time really to study much about it. So I did have some thoughts on it, and one of the things that I first thought about when I heard about this was, all the trees in that area coming down. And obviously, I know that development is going to happen, and we're going to lose some trees, but I'm in an area where I also have the railroad and the light industrial on one side, and when those trees comes down, we don't have all the traffic and noise and everything coming from the other side. And so that was a concern of mine. The trees help reduce heat. They help avoid flooding and stormwater runoff. They help improve air quality. They remove and store greenhouse gases. They of course, protect the health of our nature, which is another concern, is all the wildlife that's there is going to get pushed out into our neighborhoods. It helps keep down dust and debris. It is a barrier for sight, sounds, and smells, and it cools the streets. So I just wondered how much impact study there was done on all of that for that to go. That's point one. Obviously, it's a piece of land in the middle of town. It's highly desirable for development. And I understand the concept of highest and best use. And the apartments for rental is obviously a highest moneymaker, and I get that. But highest money for developers, not always best use. So that's one of the things that I wanted to point out, is that homeownership is a good thing to have in a town because people plant roots and they become permanent citizens. And so when you have rental units, you're gonna have people coming and going. And I think that we have enough apartments right now that people that were transitioning from rental or moving here and needing a rental and then moving into home ownership, they have that. And most of those people will, they'll rent most anywhere. And so if this site was going to be developed, I'm gonna piggyback on what David said a little bit. This is a wonderful town to be born in. It's a wonderful town to move to. If you're young and you're moving into middle age and even retire here. And we've had many people in our town that have done that. And I have so many people that come to me that would like to move or downsize into a senior conducive home that they still own. And they're not really available. They don't want to move outside of the confines of this town, the original, what they call the downtown of Kernersville. And there's just nothing available. So we had a few things in Harmon, the Harmon Mill area, the Epcon community, and it got sold right up. And I've showed some of those communities around the Triad, and you can hardly get into one. When they're developed, they're pre-sold just about before one stick ever comes out of the ground. So that is something I think that we need here. And while I think that this is probably going to be developed regardless, I think that the highest and best use for it is for something that is conducive for seniors, that they can own, and that would also be conducive for handicap. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. All right, next time, Rick Tappan.
I always have trouble hearing those folks. Can you all hear me? Rick Tappan. I live at 208 Holly Tree Drive here in Kernersville. And I've got a little PowerPoint. Unfortunately, it's very little. There's only 8 slides. So I'm against this proposed apartment project. First slide? Yeah. There's a little history goes along with this site. It started out in 2014, I believe, at K729, when the Lowe's area, we didn't know it was a Lowe's then, was proposed by the Barclay Group and for part of the Greenfield property. It went for about 6 months with continuations until they acquired another parcel they needed to make it a successful project. So it got started all over, but with the new part to the parcel, it changed from K729 to K740. And at that time, there was a lot of lobbying going on to make sure the project went through. And it was using all the media resources available to lobby for their project. The property was rezoned in July of 2015. Next slide. In October 2019, K758A1, which is the preceding one to this, was presented for rezoning to build apartments on this site. At that public hearing, it was brought out that Mr. Vieto from Barclay Group and had assured 2 sitting aldermen that no apartments were planned for this site. That assurance made K740 approved and the Lowe's Center was built. Next slide. Taking on the bane of all public hearings that the aldermen never want to hear about, traffic. Per K740 staff report, all large residential development undertake a traffic impact analysis. Per the September 2019 meeting for K 758A1, the last time a Kernersville traffic study was done in 2012. The present traffic data on the town website is for 2017. That's 7 years ago. Next slide. The Barclay Group did submit a traffic impact analysis by Davenport for their apartment project, and it showed an F level of service on all intersections on Old Winston Road. Next slide. That's the report, and all the little red ones there are all the intersections on Old Winston Road that are going to have an F service in 2023, they said. Of course, now it's 2024. In the staff report at the planning board meeting for this project, K758A2, there is no mention of traffic. When the Lowe's Center was approved, it had a predicted daily trip generation of approximately 6,000 vehicle trips per day. The 240 to 260 apartments always cited as planned for in the land use plan for this area at 10 daily trips per day would generate another 2,600 daily trip generation. We're over twice that with the Lowe's Center. Next slide. The petitioner has posted the buffer yard requirements. I did put that up there. There was no mention of traffic in the staff report, and the petitioner mentioned that they had one done, but it was never presented or offered to either the planning board or the public for their review. I don't understand why traffic is not a concern. Next slide. This is a portion of the front sheet on the drawings where they sit there and say specifically what the buffer yard requirements are for this project, which says any place adjacent to an R12 property, there's supposed to be a buffer yard. However, the Allen property at 842 Old Winston Road, it's zoned RS12, and there is no buffer yard shown on the western side of the property. Next slide, last slide. On C1, C2, C3, which are some of the drawings for the submittal to staff to be used for this and are being cited as, if approved, they would be responsible for, they sit there and say that they're going to take care of stormwater ponds according to the requirements of the Village of Clements, which is about 20 miles west of Kernersville, definitely outside the town limits. In conclusion, we don't need any more traffic down there at our circle. Right now, twice a day, between about 12 and 1 weekdays, between about 12 and 1 and 4 and 5, traffic backs up from South Main on Market View Drive to the point of where you can't get to the circle to go north into town, and in fact starting to back up coming out of Lowe's, trying to go also down to South Main, where they start blocking the way to Hopkins Road on Old Winston from uptown. We don't need any more traffic. All these traffic problems were predicated on Big Mill Farm Road being open and completed. In A1 rendition, they said they wouldn't ask for any certificates of occupancy until Big Mill Farm Road was complete. It's not complete yet, so we do not need this traffic. I got nothing else, but I'll answer any questions if you'd like.
Thank you, Rick. All right, is there anyone additional here to speak in opposition? We have a few more minutes left. Seeing that, I'll ask the petitioner, would you like to do a rebuttal?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, appreciate the comments from folks and happy to address these. I guess first and foremost, I'll say that I do understand that there's been a history of some other applications on this site, but that was not this client, that was not this applicant, and I didn't represent those requests. So I don't have a lot of context for what was said or not said in 2019. What I do know is that this is a different plan. It's been through Development Review Committee of its own accord for over a year. It has met all of the requirements of the ordinance to be before you tonight, recommended for approval by your staff. It does have a companion traffic study that goes with it, completed specifically for it, and updated accordingly as we've been through the process with all of the current traffic data utilized, and that also includes new developments that have come on since 2019, since the town did its traffic study that I mentioned for the roundabout. So it does have its own traffic study that was required. It was done. That's what led to the requirements for lane improvements along Old Winston Road to be able to turn left and right into the site without stopping traffic on Old Winston. And we are now 4 or 5 years away from the installation of that roundabout. So I understand it was new and opened in 2019, but I think now it's new and open and functioning. So I think the dust has settled from that. So I do think we have some changed circumstances. And our traffic study was able to capture that new functionality and traffic pattern disbursement. And we do have, of course, Big Farm Mill Road on the way. It's slated to start construction in 2025, which will put it around the same time that this site gets built out and actually has anyone living in it. So I think that traffic circumstances are a lot different, were carefully considered, and those considerations have passed muster. Also want to talk about a couple things we heard. This is a busy part of town. It's got people coming and going, needing to access the goods and services that are available here. And I'll reemphasize that's exactly why it's the site for multifamily. You want to give people an opportunity to live where they already need and have to be. That's car trips you're saving. That's crisscrossing of town that you're eliminating because people are already where they have to go anyway. That is a tried and true practice of sound planning, and that's why it is specified this way in your adopted comprehensive plan. So, you notice that this request doesn't have a land use plan amendment with it before you tonight, like we often have. That's because it was the town of Kernersville that contemplated this as a multifamily site. It was the town of Kernersville that said, yes, this is what makes sense here. This is the mix of uses that we want to see here. So that, I'll say a comprehensive plan acts as a very almost invitational tool for those in the development community, those in the citizenry wanting to know, hey, what's going to happen here? What should I plan for? What should I expect? It's meant for transparency and predictability. So I'm always pleased when I can come and represent a project that does exactly what the land use plan asks for, because I know it's meeting the goals and objectives of your town where we're asking to be a part of it. So that's exactly what this does, and it's for all the reasons that we've heard about from me, from Ms. Garner, and even from some of the folks you've heard about, because this is a part of town where people want to be. This is a part of town where you've got things going on, and so people want some housing options in order to live there. A town that's growing as fast and as successfully as Kernersville needs a variety of housing options, and multifamily is a part of that. You guys have had a lot of development of all varieties, a lot of single family, a lot of townhome. So the multifamily is a key part of that. The critical question is, where do you want that multifamily? It should go in the right places. And I would urge you and submit to you that this is the right place, as decided by you, the town of Kernersville. And this is the plan that we hope can give you the fulfillment of that goal and objective. We heard about some trees and the wildlife and what that does to the area. And again, I want to highlight that 66% of this site will remain as it is. It will remain with the trees that you see. It'll remain with that vegetation. So I think it's a great balancing of development needs and objectives, but also keeping that nice open space and keeping some greenery in town for both people around the site and people who will ultimately live here. And I appreciate, Mr. Dappin, you pointing out that is a typo on the stormwater requirements. That I imagine that was lifted from a previous plan set. Of course, they will comply with the stormwater regulations that the town of Kernersville utilizes, and that is state law. That's not something where we can say, hey, we'll use these regs from this jurisdiction. As Ms. Garner can attest and Chris Jensen will enforce, our engineered plans will have to comply with the town of Kernersville and the state of North Carolina's stormwater requirements.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Okay, Amanda, thank you. Let's see. Amy, Fran, or Rick, would you like to say anything in opposition? Go ahead. Fran, did you want to speak on this? Okay.
So I want to tell you all, thank you very much for your interest in Kernersville. We have an awesome town. But I would like to ask.
Amy, if you could speak to the board.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do any of you live here in Kernersville?
Amy, you need to address all comments to
Oh, I'm
us.
sorry.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if any of them live here in Kernersville and live their daily lives here.
I don't think that is a question that we can consider.
Okay. Well, again, I can appreciate that we need housing in Kernersville, but I think we really need to think through where we're placing it and how we're affecting the residents that live here in the town. Thank you.
All right, I'll recognize Fran.
I do think these buildings are beautiful. However, I agree with everybody that has said things about the traffic. I drive that way all the time because I live right there at it. So Lowe's is where I shop a lot, and I go to the pet store there. So I'm in that area a lot. And traffic is pretty bad. Also, I mean, I know the multifamily is still the highest used for a return on money. And I understand people need places to live, but 1 and 2 bedroom apartments going to mean people are coming and going. They're not going to be permanent there very long, so they're not going to put roots here. And this place is perfect for seniors, perfect for handicap. They can golf cart it right over to the shopping center. They would be able to go straight down to the park and utilize it. And there are people that have roots in this town. And so I just think there's so many people that would give up their big homes they're living in and move into those conducive homes if those would develop that way, and it opens up the market. So single family and something like that, that would be good for citizens to have good access without having to get in their cars and drive somewhere is perfect for this area.
Thank you. Rick, did you have anything else? Okay. All right. We've had the proponents, we've had the opponents, we've had a rebuttal, and we've had a counter rebuttal. So I will now declare the public hearing closed. Well, let me ask, did board members have any questions of anyone who spoke before I do that?
Madam Mayor, I do. Tell me a little bit, Amanda, I don't know whether you want to answer this or your clients, that's up to you. Tell me about your analysis of the impact of Big Mill Farm Road when it does open up. You know, there's some speculation that it will draw traffic from the Dalles Crossing side. There's speculation that it will reduce the traffic on the Main Street corridor itself. What's your analysis about the traffic impact and how that will impact the project and the traffic on Old Winston Road?
And be sure to limit your comments to the answer to the specific question.
Certainly, thank you. Thank you for the question. I'll let John fill in what I missed, but I'll say broadly, so traffic studies look at known conditions on the ground, so what's existing or what's planned and approved. Now, the Big Mill Farm Road is slated on, of course, the STIP plan, so we know it's coming, so we can, we can speculate about that with educated numbers and so forth. And what we know is that currently Old Winston Road acts as an east-west thoroughfare in Kernersville, and most people a lot of people who are using it to get across town back and forth, and of course to come to the area in question here, which is it's meant to do, to serve that area. But the biggest impact of opening of Big Mill Farm Road will be to get rid of a lot of that traffic that's just using Old Winston Road as an east-west thoroughfare to get from one side of town to the other. They don't need to stop at Lowe's, or they're not trying to go have dinner at J. Pepper's. They just need to get from one side of town to the other, and that's what they're using it for, because there's not a better alternative now. So the expectation, and I think a lot of the basis for that improvement on the STIP plan, is to take away the use of an in-town road as a regional, thoroughfare. But I'll let.
Thank you. Did that Do you have any other questions?
I do, Madam Mayor, one more. We talked about the
Is the question
improvements.
for Amanda?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, ma'am, thank you. Forgive me. The improvements to Old Winston Road. Now, I'm familiar, of course, with the traffic circle, and I think I'm glad that all that happened before I got elected. But I know about the deceleration lane that's part of the Knolls at Mill Creek. I know about the turn lane that is there coming off that traffic circle. Are there any other improvements to Old Winston Road that will have an impact on the ability to carry the additional traffic from the apartments?
Yes, sir. If I understand you correctly, you mentioned that there are new lane installments since the roundabout that go with that, right? So this project will be required to manage its own impacts from the Old Winston Road access point, which is going to be that new public road, meaning that any cars that need to access that road from Old Winston need a turn lane to do so. So we'll be required to install, this is per NCDOT's review of our traffic study, we'll be required to build and install new turn lanes that don't exist now for right turners and left turners onto that new road.
I guess I'm just trying to think that the length of Old Winston Road for us to add additional deceleration or turn lanes, I'm concerned, I'll be candid with you, I'm concerned about the condensation of that. In other words, basically, if what you're talking about would be a proposal that the access to Old Winston from the apartment complex is proposed here, that would be right at the J. Peppers entrance. My visual of that is that it's very, very close to the end of the deceleration lane that serves the Knolls at Mill Creek.
So, in other words, is
Crowded, if they're to be.
width-wise, in terms of fitting in the right-of-way, is that what you're asking, or vertical geometry?
I think vertical more than
Okay.
anything else, yeah.
Well, John might have the plans here, but what I have seen in those instances, I can say anecdotally, is a lot of times you'll see it be just a continuation, where you won't have the flare out for a decel and then come in and then a new flare out for the next decel lane, if that makes sense. So if it's that close, I imagine what NCDOT will ask us to do is just pick up that same width as it comes off the roundabout and just continue it to begin our decel lane.
Otherwise, it would seem like, you're in and out and in and out
Correct.
as you've described
Right,
it.
because one of the conditions they'll want to look for is, they don't want to create, I think they call that weaving.
Right.
They don't want to create a dangerous weaving pattern. So if it makes sense, they'll just ask us to pick up that same geometry from the decel lane coming out of the roundabout to just continue into our decel lane, excuse me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have questions of anyone in this room except for staff, any of the citizens in the room, before I close the public hearing? All right, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. I would like to move to deny the request to amend the UDO of the town of Kernersville in case K758A2. This rezoning is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, but is not reasonable and in the public interest for the following reasons. Since the adoption of the comprehensive plan, the area immediately adjacent to the subject parcel has been dedicated to the town for a public park. The density of development would negatively affect the existing greenway and the plans and development for the park. The road improvements, while acknowledged, are insufficient to mitigate the impact of traffic until Big Mill Farm Road project is completed. Therefore, I move to deny.
I've got a motion by Alderman Penix.
I would second that motion.
Got a second by Alderman Barrow. All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, before we move on to the next public hearing, would the board like to take a brief recess, or would you like to have the next? All right, we'll stand in recess for 10 minutes. I'm going to hit the gavel to make sure we're ready to go online, and then I'll start. Welcome back to the regular meeting of the Kernersville Board of Aldermen. We are to agenda item 1B, which is another public hearing for Channel Marker Woodbine LLC and the Town of Kernersville owner requesting a two-phase conditional rezoning from RS7 to RM12C for properties located at 411 Salisbury and 405 Salisbury, zoning docket K806A1. Ms. Garner?
Our next case tonight is K806.A1. This is another one-phase conditional rezoning. James Davis and the Town of Kernersville are petitioners. Channel Marker Woodbine LLC and Town of Kernersville are also owners. The current zoning is residential single-family RS7 and residential multifamily conditional. This is a change to a plan that was previously reviewed and considered by the Board of Aldermen, as well as an addition of a little portion of the adjacent parcel. And the acreage total is just over 2 acres. This was, as I mentioned, originally zoned as RM12C in the case K806, and it was originally adopted with a site plan showing an interior parking lot, 22 townhouse units, and a biocell located along Partridge Lane to the east. This case still has the same proposed use, which is residential building townhouse. That has remained the same from the previous iteration to tonight's request. A residential building townhouse is defined in our ordinance as a residential building which contains 3 or more dwelling units. Each unit occupies 1 zoning lot. The site is located northeast of the intersection of Salisbury Street and Woodbine Street, and adjacent properties are zoned to the north, residential single family. To the east, across Partridge Lane, is residential multifamily, RM18. South, across Woodbine Street, is RS7 and RM18, and west, across Salisbury Street, is RS7. This is about mid-block between Pine View and South Main Street. So this site plan, with conditional zoning, we adopt a site plan with the ordinance if approved. So the site plan proposed includes 1 parcel and a portion of another. So it's 2 parcels in total, 2.1 acres. Proposed use is residential building townhouse with 14 units over 3 buildings. So it's been reduced in number of units from the previous iteration, which had 22. It'll still be accessed off of Woodbine Street with a private street constructed to serve the individual units. And the biocell has been moved to the northeast on a piece of property that's currently owned by the town. So that would be a biocell that would, stormwater device that would functionally serve both this property and then the town's property as well. The street yard along Salisbury Street and Woodbine Street will be required to meet the Central Kernersville Overlay District requirements. So the street yard along Partridge Lane will be reduced to 10 foot in order to accommodate the biocell requirements. And the elevations in this case are required to meet the Central Kernersville District Overlay standards, which the previous case was as well. The line drawing is on the screen, and then the rendering you'll now see on the screen. So this would be one of the 3 total buildings that are proposed, and then each building would be subdivided into individual attached single-family dwellings. In the land use plan, these parcels are designated as high-density residential and medium-density residential. High-density residential is defined as a residential land use that is primarily used to provide rental housing, and it describes where it is best suited. And then it is also designated as medium-density residential. Medium-density residential areas are primarily located in the central areas of Kernersville and on the north side of North Main Street. It provides an excellent source of moderately priced housing and further discusses area where that's appropriate. This was also heard at the May Planning Board meeting. Staff's recommendation and the Planning Board's recommendation is to amend the Unified Development Ordinance of the town by rezoning the property in this case from residential single-family 7 and residential multifamily conditional to RM18C, finding the rezoning being consistent with the town's comprehensive plan and further being both reasonable and in the public interest because of the following. The requested use will serve as a good transition between the existing single-family residential and the existing multifamily residential located in the area. And the proposal is consistent with the land use plan and is appropriately defined in the high-density residential and medium-density residential use classifications. Planning board and staff also recommend approval of the site plan, subject to the conditions presented in the staff report. The vote at the planning board meeting, the May planning board meeting, is as follows: all members present voting in favor, and then the 3 absent members. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Ms. Garner. Are there any questions from Ms. Garner at this time?
I have one. Is this the exact same thing that we looked at before? With the exception of what we did to the biozone or whatever
Sure.
that thing is?
It's slightly different. They reduced the unit count from 22 to 14, so it's fewer buildings total. It's 3 buildings, and so I think it was 4 originally. So it's 14 units across 3 buildings as opposed to 22 units across 4. There's some change to the parking lot design, and then the building elevations have changed.
Okay. That picture you showed us, how many units are in that elevation picture? That one right there. How many units are in that?
I think it is 5 in this one.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was just making sure. Cool. Thank you very much.
All right, this is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Recognize Mr. Davis. If you could state your name and address for the record, it can be a business address.
Certainly. Jim Davis, 6026 Old Orchard Road, Kernersville, North Carolina. Madam Mayor, Board of Aldermen, good evening. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm a principal with Channel Marker Investments, and as the staff report indicated, and you recalled, I was before you approximately 18 months ago to rezone this property to multifamily. Shortly after we received the final zoning approvals in early 23, the residential market shifted fairly dramatically, and so we elected at that time to pause and reassess our plans for this site. What you have presented before you tonight is an upgrade to our original plan in a number of ways. As you mentioned, we decreased the density from 22 units to 14 units and really spent a lot of time with our contractor and design team to provide a high-quality, attractive product as is shown on our elevations. Given the location and the product that we plan to build, we believe this development will serve as one of the preeminent gateways to downtown Kernersville. As staff report mentioned, our plan is in compliance with the Central Kernersville Overlay District, and we have been through DRC review and incorporated that feedback into your plans. I think all of you are fairly familiar with the plan. In addition to the architectural changes made, we made some adjustments to the site plan and added the small parcel in the rear of the property to assist us with stormwater management. Those site changes and the addition of the parcel in the rear are the main drivers for the rezoning process and was a significant enough change to the site plan to warrant the rezoning before you tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about our development. I also have with me tonight our civil engineer to answer any technical questions if needed. I appreciate your time and thank you for the consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? All right, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Does the board have any questions of anyone, of Mr. Davis or anyone else here to
I
speak?
got a question for Mr. Davis.
Mr. Davis, you can back up to the podium.
About what's the square footage of each one of these units? What's the range?
They'll run somewhere between 1,500 and 2,200 square feet.
What market area are they going to be in? What are they going to sell for?
That's a great question, given the market dynamics.
Seems very nice for the area.
Yes.
I'll tell you that. I just wondered.
I would say probably in the upper 400 to lower $500,000 range.
Cool. Thank you. That's
Which
all
is
I
not
have.
much above a starter home these days.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve based on staff's recommendations.
Okay, wait a minute. I have to close the public hearing first. And my apologies, I got kicked off the internet, so I was trying to solve that and didn't catch you before you said that. All right, do you have any questions of anyone else in the room? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Now, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to make a motion for approval based on staff's recommendations.
Second.
I've got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson, got a second by Alderman Gorham. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, and now why am I not on the internet? Is this just me, or? Because I can't pull up the documents we need. We do have a binder in case of extreme emergency, but who wants to go there? All right. So we are to public hearing item C, which is a land use plan amendment, and that travels with public hearing item D. So I'll call both at the same time. We're ready to move on, right? Okay. All right, so public hearing item C is a land use plan amendment. These are always brought by the town manager, just by the practice of this board. So Curtis Swisher, agent for the town of Kernersville, for consideration of an amendment to the Kernersville Development Plan to amend the land use plan from low-density residential to office, zoning docket KDP 69. And then item D is a public hearing rezoning Baptist Missions to Forgotten Peoples, agent for Friendly Arabic Church, requesting a conditional rezoning from RS 20 to NOC, which is Neighborhood Office Conditional, for property located at 1292 Wicker Road, zoning docket K 814. I'll first recognize our Community Development Director, Ms. Garner.
I will cover the KDP amendment first and then pause for questions and then cover the rezoning. The KDP is a proposed change from low-density residential to office at 1292 Wicker Road. This request is all of parcel 6875772275, shown in red, outlined in red. It is associated with the next rezoning case, which, as mentioned, is from RS22 Neighborhood Office Conditional. The land use plan describes low-density residential as areas that provide the town one of its unique high-quality community components. The larger the single-family designated area, the greater the supply of available land, which assists in supporting a greater price range of single-family homes. This has been the primary land use in Kernersville, but rising housing costs and smaller household size is creating a demand for higher-density residential. Low-density residential shall have a density of 0 to 3 units per acre. Office is defined in the land use plan as located in areas that provide a transition between commercial and residential land uses, provides an area for attractive office park settings. The staff analysis in this case is that changing the land use plan is necessary to support the rezoning, which is requested to change to the neighborhood office conditional zoning district. The proposed designation is consistent with development in the area surrounding Maston Drive and Wicker Road, And the requested uses with the associated rezoning are church or religious institution, neighborhood, and office miscellaneous. The site plan will limit the parcel to the existing impervious footprint. This was heard at the May Planning Board meeting. Planning Board and staff's recommendation is approval of the request to designate the property located at 1292 Wicker Road from low-density residential to office. It was a unanimous vote of members present on the KDP amendment. Are there any questions on this before I move to the rezoning? Okay. The rezoning is a petition by Salim Andrews, Jonathan Lyons, and Robert, I used to know how to say this, Husinga, the agents for the owner. The owner is the Friendly Arabic Baptist Church. The current zoning is RS20, and the requested zoning is neighborhood office conditional. Conditions are being proposed for the site, including the uses as mentioned. It's about 3.5 acres in total. The site is located on the south side of Wicker Road between Maston Drive and Union Cross. The adjacent zoning is RS20, which completely surrounds the parcel on both sides and across the street. Nearby is manufactured homes, general office special, institutional and public special, and residential single-family quadruplex special planned residential development. So there are quite a lot of zoning districts in just a short hop, skip, and a jump from this parcel, including existing commercial zoning districts. The land use plan would require an amendment. We are proposing to go to office from low-density residential. So the purpose of this rezoning is to allow the applicant to move into the existing church building and use it as an office for their operations. They are a religious-based nonprofit and may one day have church service in that site, but right now they're going to be using it primarily as an office. So they've planned for their future growth and are requesting both the use of church and office miscellaneous. They have no intention of changing the exterior of the building or site, excluding necessary landscaping and parking improvements that come with changing the zoning. And the rezoning will allow them to keep the existing nature of the site intact while using it as an office in their short-term with long-term potential build-out for the church service. Proposed uses are as follows: office miscellaneous. Office is not specifically listed and defined elsewhere in this ordinance as a principal use. And then church or religious institution neighborhood scale is a church or religious institution in which the seating capacity in the sanctuary or main activity area is 600 persons or less. Landscaping requirements would include a type 1 buffer yard, a 10-foot type 1 buffer yard to be installed or shown along the western, eastern, and southern sides of the parcel. We love existing mature vegetation, so they may choose to do a tree inventory to be able to credit some of that towards what they have to plant. And then a 22-foot street yard with 3-foot tall grass berm will be installed or shown along the northern side of the parcel. Again, we don't want anybody to dig up something that may already be there. Then the ordinance provides the means that they show that they have what it requires already. The parking lot is proposed to stay the same with some updates to the painting and the striping to accommodate for ADA access routes. So it's not proposed to change in size, just be resurfaced and restriped. Directional arrows would limit the traffic flow under the awning and around the eastern side of the parking lot. And then the accessible route would be marked in the center. Planning Board and staff recommend to approve the request to amend the Unified Development Ordinance of the town by rezoning the property in case K814 from RS20 to neighborhood office conditional, finding the rezoning consistent with the town's comprehensive plan and further being both reasonable and in the public interest because the petitioner's requested conditional district rezoning allows the specific site plan to be considered to address the unique character of the area. None of the constructed features of the parcel are being changed. Uses are being limited to ensure conformance with the nature of the surrounding area, and similar developments have been approved nearby. For example, there are 2 churches and 1 office has been approved and built on Maston Drive and Wicker Road. Planning Board and staff also recommended approval of the site plan and the conditions as presented in the staff report. And at the May Planning Board meeting, it was a unanimous vote in favor with the 3 absent members. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, are there any questions of Ms. Garner at this time? All right, this is a public hearing. We're going to combine the public hearings for items 1C and 1D. So your comments at the public hearing can be about the land use plan, the rezoning, or the site plan. I'll declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Please come forward. And if you could give your name and your address, and it can be a business or church address.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Lyons, 1590, what's the address? 1292 Wicker Road, there you go, Kernersville. I'm still learning it. I'm the president of Baptist Missions Forgotten Peoples. We've been located in Jacksonville, Florida for 40 years, and now I've wanted to relocate to this area. This is where I call home. And I was here for many years. I'm a missionary, been a missionary for many years. Come back to head the mission board, and so most of our activities are held with office staff, caring for 120 families around the world that are carrying the gospel and planting churches. And so we've created a good relationship with the former owner who's here, as well as the neighbors around us, and looking to be a help and a blessing to the community as much as we can. So thank you so much for your consideration and for your time to bring our case before you tonight.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Would the board like to ask questions of anyone who's here as a citizen?
I got a question.
For
this young fellow right here.
Okay, if you come forward, and then let me close the public hearing before we go into discussion.
I was listening to you. Exactly what do y'all do, or what are you gonna do on this site? It's not a church.
We are a mission agency, so we work with local churches to get missionaries around the world. So we handle their finances, we handle any international problems, issues with government issuing repatriation letters, insurance for overseas missionaries, helping them get meetings, myself as well as those that work there. We travel and do meetings and help get new missionaries. At this time, we'll have 2 office staff ladies that will manage the office, handle the calls, all the finances, the accounting part of all the missionaries, taking care of them, as well as the correspondence with churches and missionaries around the world.
How many people will work on that site to begin with?
To begin is 4 of us. And then occasionally, once a year, we have like we had this coming week, candidate training, when we bring in the new missionaries, our board members. We have a board meeting, 30 people, 40 people, so.
Where are y'all located at now? Where are y'all doing this at now?
We were in Jacksonville, Florida.
Why are you moving to Kernersville?
Excuse me?
Why are you moving to Kernersville?
We are associated with Gospel Light Baptist Church in Workatown, and also with Kerwin Baptist Church in here, and so this area we know. We have 3 international airports: Greensboro, Raleigh, and Charlotte. A lot of us travel internationally, so it's just a good area to be able, and I've always liked Kernersville, so it worked out pretty good.
Good deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Is there any discussion, further questions of our staff, or a motion? Oh, and by the way, we need to have 2 separate votes. The first one would be on the resolution amending the land use plan, and then the second vote would be on the rezoning and site plan.
Motion to approve 1C as presented by staff.
All right, that's the land use plan.
Second.
Got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson, a second by Alderman Barrow. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, the second one is the rezoning and the site plan. Is there a discussion, or do I have a motion? Motion to approve with the conditions recommended by staff by Alderman Apple, second by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson. All in favor? It's unanimous. We look forward to you conducting your ministry in Kernersville. Thank you for choosing Kernersville for this important work. All right. We are now to another text amendment, another public hearing. This is a public hearing regarding child daycare facilities. Public hearing text amendment Curtis Swisher, agent for the town of Kernersville, requests a text amendment to section 4.4 of the UDO regarding licensing requirements for child daycare facilities, zoning docket KT 277, to bring us in conformance with state law. Ms. Garner?
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. My last text amendment, or my last public hearing for the evening, is a text amendment. Our purpose is to mirror the standards and requirements that are set forth in the North Carolina Division of Child Development as a minor revision to our ordinance standards and additional conditions for the child care facility options that we offer in our UDO. They range based on the size of the facility, so that's why there are so many, and we're proposing to amend all of them. So the current UDO defines with each respective child care category differently. Staff recommends revising the standard license required or registration required to choose specific and synonymous language as it pertains to each category of childcare. So larger facilities do tend to have more conditions, use conditions in the UDO, but we would like to correlate the requirement for licensing to mirror that of the states, which says, by using the language that licensing requirements shall follow those of the North Carolina Division of Child Development at the time of permit application to the town of Kernersville. Some of them are required to be, some of them are optional to be licensed, so that we feel that this language for all of these different types of childcare facilities would then allow the state, if the state changes the regulations, then we don't have to come back and modify it, but it doesn't require a business owner to become licensed if the state does not otherwise require them to be licensed. If it's optional for the state, then it would be optional for us. So that is proposed for all of the different childcare center and childcare homes that we offer in the UDO. This was also presented at the May Planning Board meeting. Planning Board and staff recommend approval of the ordinance, and it also received a unanimous vote of the members present at the May meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. This is a public hearing. I'll declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Seeing none, is there anyone here in opposition? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Does the board have any questions of Ms. Garner, or do you have a motion?
I got one.
Okay.
Doing this definitional change here, that's not going to put anybody that's currently in business out of business or in a insufficient spot to continue business. We're not affecting anybody here now, is that correct?
I don't believe so. It would just, our ordinance requires everybody to be licensed, whether or not the state requires them to be licensed. And we have had someone say, but the state doesn't require me to be licensed. Why are you doing that? So we said, well, that's a really good question. So that's why we want the language to mirror that if the state requires it, then you have to be licensed. But if the state leaves it optional to you, then it's optional to you.
Good deal. Thank you, Kathy.
All right, do I have a motion?
I move, Madam Mayor, that we approve the text amendment to section 4.4 of the UDO, set forth in subparagraph 1 as recommended by staff.
Okay, I've got a motion by Alderman Apple for approval. Got a second by Alderman Gorham. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, that concludes our public hearings for tonight, and we are to the public session. Our first item on the agenda is speakers from the floor. I don't believe I received any cards. Mr. Hooker, do we have any cards for speakers from the floor? All right, if you have a concern, question, comment, other ideas you want to share with the board, and it's not otherwise listed on the agenda, this is your opportunity to do so as a speaker from the floor. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 2B, which is consideration of a resolution setting the public hearing for a voluntary annexation petition for properties on Ogden School Road and Davis Ridge Road, consisting of 8.6 acres more or less. The properties are at 146, 166, and 0 Ogden School Road, and 2055 Davis Ridge Road. Is this Ms. Garner?
Madam Mayor, we've received a rezoning and annexation petition by the Arden Group for some additional property that they've acquired around Weldon. It is not currently in the town limits or the ETJ, so they are petitioning for annexation. And so this is a request to set the public hearing, which will be on your docket in July.
Okay, do I have a motion? Got a motion for approval by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson, second by Alderman Barrow. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, item C is consideration of an ordinance for Budget Amendment 9.
Madam Mayor and Board, you have in your packet the budget ordinance. It's budget ordinance, budget amendment number 9. We thought this might be the last one, but I think you'll have a number 10 before the year ends. We were wrapping up all of the expenses that went over and the revenues that came in more than we expected. I won't go through all of those. Some of the ones that might stand out, number 5, the street department expenses for the net of $141,000 to primarily cover street lighting. This is something that I mentioned in the budget that's coming up. Our cost of street lighting has increased. It went up about $140,000 more than what was budgeted in 23-24. So we have to cover that. Number 3, you'll see there in the police department expenses, about 60-some thousand of that 90,000 is to cover the increase in the price of the vehicles and the equipment to go on those vehicles that were ordered fiscal year 23-24. Number 2, there, the finance department, 79,000. Most of that's general banking. Our cost of 1%, 3%. And then the taxes, collecting taxes and everything, we collected more than what we thought. We took in more on credit card than what we normally do, so we had to increase that. Everything else in there is just pretty much standard expenses that went up a little bit. We do have the recreation department. We had some repairs, not to vehicles, but to our tractors that we use in Parks and Recreation. I think 2 of those we had repairs. We had to rent a tractor in the interim. We also had some repairs at Century Lake Park as well as Harmon Park. So in addition to that, though, the good news is we had some revenue come in, more than what we anticipated. You'll see on the back side of that page, we increased our revenues by $153,000 to reflect the sale of capital assets. We increased the functionally related revenues about $630,000 to reflect increases in the building inspection fees, programming, senior garden programming and gift shop, and recreation revenues. We had some operating grants and contributions for Challenger flag football. And we also had some money increase in our interest earned on our investments. So overall, when everything washes out, we have a decrease in the fund balance appropriated so far for fiscal year 23-24. We will decrease that amount by $971,000, leaving us year to date total appropriation of about $3.2 million. So be glad to answer any questions that you have about any of those items.
Are there any questions? Do I have a motion to approve the budget amendment?
So moved.
Got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson, second by Alderman Apple. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, we are to item D, relating to the fire code. Discussion and consideration of the adoption of Appendix D. Mr. Swisher?
Madam Mayor and Board, I'll give you a general synopsis of this, and then either Ms. Garner or Chief Alderman can give you the technical questions if you have any, or answer the technical questions. Basically, this came up when we were working on some rezoning cases with Mike Thielen, the attorney that represented us from Marble Bond. And Appendix D of the fire code is one of those that states that it has to be specifically adopted, and we've not specifically adopted it. We've adopted in our ordinance, it says in all appendices of the fire code, but Appendix D has to be specifically adopted. Don't ask me why, I don't really know. So he suggested that we go through and just adopt all the appendices. I think that's what we're doing here, is that correct?
Yes, along with the one chapter within the fire code or the state building code that's changed, and that's just a technical correction for us. I don't know why the state decided to change the title. That's what that's chapter 4.
Okay, so we're adopting everything specific as well with Appendix D. We've already, we thought, had it adopted. We were initially going to do it, Mike said we could do it when the state went through, but the state has delayed it for whatever reason, almost 6 years. So since we don't really have anything adopted, we need to go ahead and adopt it. It will change nothing about how we do business, except for we do have that, I guess, correctly adopted, for lack of a better word.
All right, does anyone have any questions of Chief Alderman or staff? Okay, do I have a motion to approve? Got a motion by Alderman Penix, a second by Alderman Apple. All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, we are to item E, discussion and consideration of a resolution authorizing the purchase of real property located at 217 Beeson Court. Mr. Swisher?
You have in your packet the resolution to purchase real property. As I said, at 217 Beeson Court, the 0 Beeson Road is just the 1/3 interest in the gravel road there, to use that as a road. You also have in your packet the agreement to purchase with exhibit, I think it's A or B, exhibit B, that states out the stipulations of that purchase. The money to purchase this will come from the $1.8 million that the state gave the town to purchase land at Ivy Redmond Park. This is right beside of a house that the town currently owns, and right beside of, or across the street from land that the town purchased a couple years ago. So we're purchasing the house. Purchase price is $287,500. You have the stipulations in Exhibit B. The seller will be allowed to remain in the property for up to 10 years. If we require her to move out before that period in time, we'll pay her $7,500 in moving expenses. That kind of gets her closer to the price that she initially wanted for the property. The town will maintain the land around the house, the grass, we'll mow the grass and so forth when we're there mowing the property next door. She will be responsible for everything inside the house, foundation of the house, things such as that. I was trying to think if there's anything else. No, if we want to move out before the 10 years, we'll give her 6 months notice that we're doing that. We'll carry insurance on the house, of course. House will be titled deeded to the town. And again, she pays for the things, new roof, new windows, things like that. She's responsible. We're just responsible for the maintenance. Trees, things like that, we'll cover it on the outside, but everything on the house or inside is hers. Be glad to answer any questions. I think I've showed you all a map before about where the property is. If you're going down Beeson Road and you turn onto Beeson Court, it is the first house on the left that faces Beeson Court. The property the town already owns that adjoins it is the last house on the left before you get to Beeson Court. It faces Beeson Road. So we own the property. The back of our property will back up to the back of her property.
All right, any questions? Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
I'd make a motion, Madam Mayor, to purchase the property located at 217 Beeson Court and 0 Beeson Road from Miss Mary Smith.
Second.
Got a motion by Alderman Barrett, second by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson. All in favor? It's unanimous. And very good job negotiating this, Curtis, and this careful consideration for the future development of Ivy Redmond Park. We appreciate your hard work in this regard. All right, item F, discussion and consideration of details for items related to Big Mill Farm Road.
need the board to vote to remove this. We don't have those details for those items yet. We will have those in the morning, which is a little bit late for the meeting tonight. So we'll put it back on for June 26th meeting.
Do you want us to continue it to that date or just remove it for tonight?
I would just
decide?
remove it, vote to remove it, and if we have everything ready, which I think we will, Catherine, Dorn, and myself are meeting in the morning with DOT. We've got everything just about worked out. We just need to kind of get clear on where they're thinking for some fencing along Big Mill Farm.
So that is helpful to tell so that people aren't thinking it's something it's not. So this is just details of fencing for the road and...
Yeah, it's mainly fencing, where do we want, which type fencing. Some things dealing with the different type poles for the stoplights and things like that. But we're meeting with the DOT representative in the morning and should have that all worked out.
So it's just some of the fine details of how the road would appear.
Correct. And they have, the DOT has a standard that, like a standard stoplight pole they would put in, and if we want something different, then we need to let them know that. Of course, there's a cost to that. Those type items are what we're working out to bring back to the board to see, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? Do you want this type fence or do you want that type fence? Things like that. So we'll have all those hopefully by June 26th.
Okay. All right. So I'd like a motion by the board to remove this item from this agenda. Got a motion by Alderman Apple, second by Barrow. All in favor? It's unanimous. Did you get that, Keith? Apple and Barrow? Okay. Item G is discussion and consideration of an agreement with the Kernersville Museum Foundation. Mr. Swisher?
Madam Mayor and Board, as you all are aware, we were approached some time ago by some of the members of the board for the Kernersville Museum and asked about the town taking over the daily operations and management of the museum. As you all know, the town owns the structures that are there, with the exception of maybe one, and I don't know if it even has a real deeded owner. But we own the house that the museum is in. We own the other house, the Morris House that's on Cherry Street. We've done a lot of the maintenance on those houses in the past. We also own the parking lot there that's next to or in between the two houses. So we've been working with members of their board. Ray Thomas, their attorney, has been working with Ed on drafting the agreement. We've had discussions with you all about it, and we finally got to an agreement that you all have in front of you. I'm not going to read all of the agreement to you, as you all have had it for some time. I will just highlight some of it. There's one blank page in there, or two blanks on the page. We're recommending that the agreement become effective July 1st of 2024, because that's when our fiscal year begins. You'll see under the first whereas, it says a transfer of any and all remaining museum foundation properties and the responsibilities of the museum foundation will be transferred to the town for all ownership, management, maintenance, and upkeep of the museum foundation properties. So basically everything that they have gets on down into the last whereas, that being artifacts, acquisitions, things like that, will come over and be ownership of the town. There is a clause in here that if someone has donated something to the museum and their preference is that it does not come over to the town, we'll give that back to that individual. That's not, it's not an issue if they said, hey, I gave it to the museum, not the town. That's fine. We'll give it back. If someone comes in at some point in time and it looks like that we can verify they have ownership of something and it wasn't given back initially, we'll still do that. We don't have a problem with that. I think some of those items are on loan as well. We'll assume the responsibility of that if someone comes in and of course wants an item back. There will be a board of directors of the Museum Foundation, much like the one we have at the Senior Gardens. It's an advisory board to the town on how to best manage or some things that we can do there at the museum. The town will appoint 50% of that board of directors, and one of those appointees will be a member of the current board of aldermen at the time. Also in there, that the Museum Foundation will be allowed to use the facilities 2 consecutive days, 3 times per year at no cost to the Museum Foundation, and this is really for events that they currently have. They have the Hometown Christmas that's held between Thanksgiving and December 31st. They also have the ice skating rink and then the community wish tree, and I think the chicken stew. We don't have an issue with that. I don't see that being a problem with them using that on those dates. Then on page 3 of the agreement, you have how the revenues will be split up. It's basically kind of the 100% of revenues that we go out and solicit that's directed to us, the town receives. If they go out and apply for something as a museum foundation and they get it, then of course they keep that. Has a role of what the Museum Foundation's friends in the museum will also, what their role will also be. And the rest of it is talking about entering into contracts. I will say that on page 3, item 5, the last sentence, that's repetitive of what's in there, so we will strike that out if everyone's fine with that. It just says the town shall also be responsible for necessary costs associated with operation and management of the Museum Foundation properties. That's in the first part where it says they'll be given to us. We obviously have that, so we'll strike that out. That's really the agreement. In short, be glad to answer any questions that the board may have specifically related to that. And I know Ray Thomas is here, as well as Rick Pierce and some other members of the board that may speak to it, or will be glad to answer any questions that you have of the board from their side of the agreement.
All right, are there any questions, any discussion? I'd like to thank the board of the museum and the directors, Rick and Ray and Scott Alderman, I think maybe has been on the board in the past. Have you?
Our members.
Chris Langham was.
Our members are here, Chandra, Ray, Charlene, myself, and Deanna May.
Thank you for your involvement in preserving and collecting and sharing the history of the town of Kernersville, and I really appreciate these community events have just been so wonderful. There's been so many Christmas pictures taken at the museum, and I'm happy that you're still involved, still interested in being involved in a foundation board, but in a little bit of a different capacity. You know, it was kind of an experiment and a dream to start a museum in Kernersville like that, and the exhibits and events over the years have been absolutely wonderful. So this is just a nice opportunity to preserve this for the future and continue some of these fine traditions associated with the museum. So appreciate you working with the town manager and bringing this idea to the board. Is there any questions, discussion, or do I have a vote?
I move we approve the agreement with subparagraph G.
Okay, I've got a motion by Alderman Apple for approval, second by Alderman Gorham. All in favor? All in favor? It's unanimous. And Chris, I neglected to mention, I think you've been involved a lot in the skating rink and some of the work there at the museum too over the years.
A little bit of everything over the years.
Yes, thank you for all of that. We appreciate everybody's involvement to make that happen. And Mr. Swisher, next steps on this? Anything in particular? I guess if someone's concerned about an item in the museum, they should contact the town hall.
They can contact us, or right now probably contact Rick or one of the board members, and then we'll work with them.
Okay, awesome, thank you. All right, so the next is item H, discussion and consideration of the compensation for the mayor and board of aldermen.
Madam Mayor, I would like to bring to the attention of our board in regards to the current compensation and why I think that we need to increase the compensations that's being given to the ones that serve in that capacity. I think we can all agree that the cost of living has greatly increased since COVID, and we can see that by minimum wage is going from $7.25 up to almost $17 anywhere you go. Our budget has increased greatly. The population of Kernersville is increasing. And when we had the staff to go out and take a look at compensation that was being set for similar towns of our size and whatnot, to include Burlington, Carlville, Cornelius, Kannapolis, Salisbury, Statesville, Wilson. When you average all those compensations together for the mayor of those various towns and cities, the compensation was on average a little bit over $20,000, almost $21,000 annually. And then looking at the compensation for the aldermen, that compensation close to $12,000 annually. And with all that information that we've gathered so that we can make an informed decision, I would like for us to maybe discuss that tonight, and then, if appropriate, make a motion to set a new compensation for the mayor and the alderman.
Madam Mayor, I think it certainly bears our saying that one of the cardinal rules that as being newly elected aldermen that we learned very much on the front end very, very well is that we cannot vote, and by this motion that's made, if it is made and is adopted, we cannot impact the compensation that any member of the board or the current mayor receive during the existing term. This would only apply prospectively. Would take effect, I guess, in 2025.
December.
December 2025 bill.
Yes. So it's not something that we're not, it's not something that we're changing in terms of what we are paid. I frankly think there were several of us, and I'll raise my hand as being one, who was naive enough to think when we decided to run for the board, I didn't know we got any compensation. I mean, I don't think there's anybody up here that was prerequisite to our coming forward to try to serve the citizens of Kernersville in that fashion. But I thought Alderman Barrow has made a real good observation concerning the future of the board and how it might impact that as well.
That's correct, Bill. My thought was, I didn't feel like anybody up here felt like we needed a raise or came here to be paid to be alderman. I don't believe they could pay you enough. But anyhow, having said that, the compensation is so low, it's lower than all these cities, and it needs to be up high enough to where if somebody wanted to run and to be an alderman or participate, that it would be something there to help allow folks that maybe, work a part-time job or something in addition to a full-time job. And, there will be enough there to help them get through and be able to serve the community. Nobody's getting rich here, but it would open the door to, I think, more people that would want to come run and possibly be aldermen. I think that's a good idea. Having said that, thank you, Bill.
Yeah, I'd like to just say that I think it reflects on the town of Kernersville. When you're not paying the mayor anything anywhere near in line with the other cities in North Carolina, and we're not Dobson's Crossroads anymore. We've got a lot of rezoning and different items that take a lot more time than it used to. There's a lot more driving. There's a lot more meeting with people. Sometimes there can be mental abuse. but we need to make the salary at least attractive for somebody to think it's a worthwhile cause. So I would be in favor of absolutely discussing it and maybe going ahead tonight and set a new standard for us. If anybody would like to make a motion or...
Well, since I brought this issue up, I have no hesitation to make that motion if the board don't have any more questions. If there's no more questions, I will make the motion, Madam Mayor. I would like to make a motion to set the compensation for the Board of Aldermen at $12,000 a year and the compensation for the mayor at $20,000 a year, and that this compensation will be effective in December of 2025.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. A second by Alderman Thompson, or Mayor Pro Tem Thompson. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, moving on to the next item. Item I is the consideration of a resolution adopting written criteria for the design-build method for the Ivy Redmond Street Restoration Project. Mr. Swisher?
Madam Mayor, Board, you have in your packet a memo from Dorn in the resolution. The memo outlines the reason for doing this. We're required by the state for the design-build delivery method. We have to specify the criteria that's relevant to that to utilize that method of delivery. Dorn has done that in the memo. He stated, I think, 8 criteria total that pertains to that design-build method for that stream restoration. And in the end, you'll see that there's no fiscal impact of this policy and approval of this method to the project, and it will authorize town staff to move forward with the use of the design-build delivery method for the restoration project. It's just a different method that allows us to do it hopefully cheaper and also faster in this project.
Okay, are there any questions? There's a resolution enclosed in the packet which covers everything we need to decide.
Madam Mayor, I move we approve the resolution included in the packet regarding the adopting of design and build criteria for the stream restoration project.
Okay, I've got a motion by Alderman Apple.
Madam Mayor, I like faster and cheaper. So.
And is that a second?
Well, I believe.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson. And support expressed by Alderman Vera. All in favor? It's unanimous. And for those of you who may have been following this over the past few years, and those of you who may be wondering, what is this and why do we vote so fast? Ivy Redmond Park, between Ivy Redmond and housing that faces Union Cross Road, there's a stream. And that stream was determined to be significantly impacting water quality downstream and in the state because of the large amounts of sediment that were washing into the stream. So the town did a rather landmark restoration of first reach of that stream that ended up being a in-house, on-site classroom for some students at NC State University who are studying environmental issues. And so they came and they actually did a class there and helped do some work on it. Amazing redevelopment and reuse of the materials at the site. The floodplain was adjusted. The trees that were cut down were used to create bends and meanders and reduce erosion. And as a result of that project, there were actually embankments cutting in 16 feet or so and trees falling into that area. So So some of those trees were reused inside, and at the time that project was finished, there were some tours, so some of you may have been on the tours, but after that project, the basically sediment-choked creek had a new life, and the dragonflies and frogs and all the natural insects and salamanders and that kind of thing that live there have returned. And so we had a federal grant because of the efforts of Representative Kathy Manning to also restore other reaches of it. And JR and I walked with her through were you there too? And Bill, Bill and I walked with her through probably the tallest blooming poison ivy I have ever seen. It was taller than my head, and it was in bloom. So fortunately, Ernie Pages gave us some cream to put on our skin to prevent outbreaks of poison ivy that day. But I have to give her a shout out of appreciation for walking that area with us to see where the housing would have been impaired by further degradation of this creek. The developer had dedicated land. The land on the other side is owned by the town, and so this is a further work on that same project, and will make a significant contribution to water quality because of it. Is there any other comments?
It was an itchy situation.
All right, so we have voted on that, right? And so we are moving on now to the consent agenda. All right, approval of minutes for the April 24th closed session is A. Item 3B is approval of minutes for the May 1 closed session. Is there any aldermen who'd like to remove either of those for any edits or corrections? All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor Pro Tem Thompson, in favor. Second motion, second by Alderman Gorham. All in favor? It's unanimous. All right, moving on to Town Manager's report. Mr. Swisher.
I just have one quick item, and it is a kind of a correction to something that was in your draft budget that I discussed at the budget hearing. It's not a change in the amount of the budget, but I had in a chart that's in the budget that we were hiring 2 recreation center attendants. It's actually 3. They're all 3 part-time. During the budget, I just had 2 instead of 3 in that chart. So it is 3 that will be part-time rec center attendants. And then I think in there I put that the full-time firefighter that's replacing the part-times would start in January, and they will actually start in July, not January.
Could you make those corrections and also the correction to the nonprofit funding chart from the occupancy tax so that when people click on the budget, they'll have the corrected information?
Yes, we'll make those.
Okay. Do we need to vote? You don't need to vote to do that. You can just, okay. All right, any questions about Curtis's corrections? All right, matters to be presented by Ed Powell, the town attorney.
Madam Mayor, I do not have a report tonight.
Thank you. Matters to be presented by the mayor and board of aldermen. Mr. Penix?
Just one quick comment. When you get to be old and semi-retired like me, you have time to do things you ordinarily wouldn't have to do. Recently, in the last year, we can get so many different channels on YouTube and the way they work our TV systems now. I've been intrigued by the number of documentaries on D-Day. And D-Day, if it weren't for D-Day, none of us would be here right now. It changed the world. And if we had lost, there was no backup plan. That was it. I mean, Eisenhower, he threw everything he had at them and liberated France and went on from there. And there was no way out. It was either get it done or die. And a lot of them died. And, you always think about your heroes growing up, and mine were always athletes. But my real heroes are those guys that did that. And I just thought it was worth mentioning that because in 2 days it's going to be 80 years. And to make it more close to home, one of our aldermen had a father at D-Day. That's John Barra. His father, Bill Barra, people called him Was, and that was his nickname, was a real town character and a real close friend to me. And to Curtis and a lot of people in this room probably. But he was over there in the middle of all that, and as many conversations as I had with your daddy, he never mentioned it. And the way I found out about it, John put a wonderful Facebook post one Father's Day, probably 8 or 10 years ago, on Facebook. About it steady, I never forgot it. It made a real impact on me, and if it's somebody that close to you, you really think about it. But there were hundreds of thousands of people just like Was Barra that saved our country and saved France and at that time Russia. And I want to say thank you for, I think from all of us to your father.
Thank you for bringing that up. And you're right. If you hadn't asked him about it, you'd never know.
Yeah.
He never asked for anything back. I think Sally Coltrane told him back in the 60s, he says, well, you was in the service, wasn't you? He said, yeah. He says, well, you get a loan for a house. I think that's the only benefit he ever used from that. But he didn't talk about it. He didn't talk about it at all. When we was kids, we'd ask him, Daddy, how many Germans did you shoot? You know what his answer was? None. I might have grazed one. Didn't like talking about it. So what they had to do, all of them guys, they all had to do that.
Yeah, and
they had to go save this country and this world. And that's it. There's a bunch of them.
So if you get a chance on Thursday, if you happen to see a special on TV about the anniversary of D-Day, watch it. It'll really make you think. That's all I've got.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Gorham.
Joe, thank you so very much for acknowledging what was done on D-Day. And as I have been known to say from time to time, because I feel that from the bottom of my heart, that the men and women of this country who wear that military uniform, they don't do the things that they do because of the enemy that stands before them. They do the things that they do because of their family and their friends and their community that stands behind them. And so we should never forget the ones who have paid that price for what we call liberty and freedom. It affords us the opportunity to walk in it every day. So I agree totally, wholeheartedly with what you just said. And that is an excellent segue into an issue I want to bring before the board. I was contacted last week by Victor Jones, who was an alderman over in High Point, on the town council over there in High Point. He is also the chairman of the Hero Center in High Point. And over the last year and a half, they've been working with a couple that has the Kernersville address to try to restore the house that they've been living in. They poured in about $25,000 to $30,000 in parts and labor over the last year and a half to try to get this house back up to standard and whatnot. And because of the serviceman, the veteran that lived there,
with this failing health over the last 20 years, they have not been able to bring it up. And so they've almost completed the project. And they needed another $6,500 to finish the foundation of the house. Two of the members have donated $2,000 to it, $1,000 apiece, and they're in need of another $4,500 to complete that project for one of those guys that you're talking about. And so I don't know if we have funds available or how we could go about doing it, but if there's any way possible that we could help that one veteran family with any kind of funds we might have here, I think that would be money well spent.
Yeah, I think, as you and I talked, I think the board couldn't give it directly to that family. It is a nonprofit that's assisting that family here in Kernersville or right outside Kernersville, and I think you could certainly make the motion, whether it's the entire $4,500 or $2,000, $2,250, whatever it may be, to give the money to that nonprofit and then have them directed in the manner that you wish. You can certainly make that motion tonight. We would either, if there's some room in a line item in one of the budgets, move it over, but if not, we just put it in the next budget amendment. Like I said, I think we got one more. If not, we could put it in the first one in the next fiscal year and then send the money to them at that point, which it won't be long. I mean, it'll probably be the end of July. But I think if we have one more, we could put it in that. But it would need to be directed to that nonprofit instead of to the individual. Yeah, you could give it to the Hero Center, and then they would, of course, know what the intention is there. Because that nonprofit, like all of the other nonprofits that's funded by the town, they do provide service to Kernersville citizens. This particular citizen may or may not be, but they do provide service to Kernersville citizens. So that would be who you need to give it to, and we could get them the information they would need to fill out for that.
I'd like to get that feeling of the remainder of the board. If I have any concerns about that, or could I put it in the form of a motion? Okay, I would like to then make a motion that we provide up to the $4,500 that's necessary to get this veteran into a livable situation in his home. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. All in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you very much. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Apple.
No, ma'am. I think we've done some good things tonight. I would like to call the attention of the folks listening tonight, not just those in the room here, that you may have seen on Fox 8 News, Channel 8, the first of a series of My Town Mondays. I'm not sure that's the proper term, but our mayor spent considerable time with a reporter, a features reporter from Fox 8, and the first installment was a really effective tour of several of the various sites in our town, of which we're all very proud, and it presented a very fine image of the community as a great place to live, with a great heritage and of great interest to those who are interested in touring things like the Folly and the Paul J. Senior Botanical Garden and others. So if you haven't seen it, it's available two places that I know of. One is on the Fox 8 website, and the other place it's available is on my Facebook page. So there's a link to it. If you haven't seen it, it's probably just shy of 5 minutes, but it was a very well done. And it's one of the things that the mayor does that sort of in her free time, of which is very little. It's one of the things that she does that basically I think justifies what we did on JR's motion about the compensation. So take a look at it if you haven't, it'll make you proud. As have a lot of things that we've talked about tonight.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. Barrow?
I have nothing to add tonight.
Nothing about a pool?
Well, no, we're on the way with the pool, so
All right.
I'll give you a break on that.
Mr. Thompson?
I have nothing either, thank you.
All right, thank y'all.
Mayor,
Yes.
I got caught up in my emotions a while ago when we started talking about veterans and stuff like that. It touches my heartstring, and I was so caught up that I forgot to mention that 2 weeks from now, here in Kernersville, we're going to have our third celebration of Juneteenth at Harmon's Park, right beside First Citizens Bank. We're going to have some local talent. A young lady here grew up in Kernersville on the East Forsyth, and her band is going to be here singing. We're going to have a drone show. The first time that I know of that we've had a drone show in Kernersville, and it starts at 6 o'clock on the 18th. The first 100 people that come get a free Juneteenth t-shirt. And I'm extending an invitation for every person in Kernersville to come and join us to celebrate the liberation of all African Americans in the United States. We don't want to lose that history. So please come out and show your support for this celebration 2 weeks from tonight. Tell your family and friends, come on out and celebrate with us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, JR. All right, is there any further business before the board this evening? If not, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Had a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Thompson. Second by Alderman Barrow. All in favor? It's unanimous. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.